Welcome back to our series on Pride, guys. In the previous episode, which you can click here if you missed it, in the previous episode we discussed gay rights and public opinion through most of the recorded history, and today we focus more on the 20th century and the protests and riots that would eventually become Pride festivals we all know and love. So I bet if I asked you about the first historical event that would be considered the first Pride, you'd probably think I was going to tell you about the Stonewall riots in the USA, and you'd be half right, because I am. A lot. But did you know the first historical events of Pride marches actually started occurring in 1965 when the Daughters of Bilitis and Matachin Society organised a series of marches each year in various cities? One was held in New York, where they marched to and protested in front of the United Nations headquarters, and another was a march held in Washington, where they marched to and protested in front of the White House. These marches were a protest for gay rights in the USA, but also included a focus on the treatment of homosexual men in Cuban labor camps as well. These marches and protests are historically known as the Reminder Pickets and were the earliest examples of the lgbtqia plus groups organising and protesting the federal and international governments for visibility and equal rights. The next major event cited in the history of Pride is the one most of us are probably familiar with, the infamous Stonewall uprising of June 28, 1969. Which, FYI, is why June is also considered Pride Month to begin with. While Stonewall was in no way an isolated incident with police raids on gay bars, bathhouses and other LGBTQIA hangouts, going back well into the 19th century, police raids in these establishments ramped up to after 1950 in the USA under recently established anti-communism laws. Pretty much a law that allowed for systematic discrimination of LGBTQIA plus communities under the suggestion that because being homosexual is taboo, in the USA, the Soviets could use someone's homosexual status to blackmail them into becoming a Soviet agent or to be outed as a homosexual. You see the flaw in the logic here? So in the early hours of Saturday, June 28, 1969, a group of 8 police officers led by Deputy Inspector Seymour Pine announced to the bouncer watching the door at Stonewall, "Police! We're taking the place!" And after getting a call to confirm that there were already undercover officers already inside waiting for this raid, according to police records, the raid was intended to follow the standard practices for raiding a gay bar or club. The patrons were expected to just line up, provide ID, while female officers would take any female-looking patrons to the toilets for a physical inspection of their genitals to determine their biological sex. Any patrons found to be male in appearance dressing in women's clothing would then be arrested. However, the patrons of Stonewall had other plans, as the police began to demand the female and female presenting patrons go for physical inspections, and the male and male presenting patrons provide ID. Both groups straight up refused to cooperate. Damn right. And with the police allegedly deciding to separate the patrons into 3 groups, men, women and suspected cross-dressers, while using unethical intimidation tactics such as male officers physically harassing the lesbian patrons, allegedly feeling them up. It was at this point that all other officers not watching the groups of patrons executed the second part of their raid and confiscated the bars of liquor, which was then to be loaded into the patrol wagons waiting outside. The staff, the patrons, all under arrest and go to the police station. But when the police began to first carry the liquor outside, they discovered the police vehicles had yet to arrive, leaving the policemen and some 200 patrons really pissed off. In an attempt to relieve some of the pressure and tension, Pine ordered only the members of the mafia that owned the bar to be loaded into the wagon. This momentarily did what it was expected to do, as the majority of the crowd began to cheer. Feeling emboldened or fooled by the sudden approving reaction from the crowd, Pine then ordered the bar's staff to be loaded into the wagon as well. This is the moment everything fell apart very, very quickly. As the bar staff were loaded into the wagon, a shout of "Gay power! Yeah!" was hurled mockingly at the police as others in the crowd began singing "We shall overcome." Police reports at this time contradict each other, however. Some say the crowd were in lovely humour, but others state that the crowd was growing in intensive hostility. One bystander and future author, Edmund White, had already been passing by when he saw and joined the crowd, described it as such: "Everyone's restless, angry and high-spirited. No one has a slogan, no one even has an attitude, but something's brewing." One of the police officers thought it would be a good idea to shove one of the drag queens, and in response to this, she smacked him with her purse. And maybe the claws came next, I'm not too sure, to which his reply came in the form of hitting her with his baton. And side note, many people are under the impression that this drag queen was the late Marsha P. Johnson, but Marsha herself states she was not at the Stonewall that night and did not arrive until around 2 a.m. She would then take on a major role in the coming days, but was not there when the raid initially took place. It was after seeing that this crowd began to boo and heckle the police while some others threw garbage, empty beer cans and pennies at the patrol wagon, the police physically struggled with another drag queen already in handcuffs. She had managed to get away from the police several times before they essentially began to beat her and then started on the crowd. While all this was happening, a rumour that police were beating detainees still inside the bar began to spread in the crowd, and this followed by the drag queen's pleas to the crowd of "Why don't you guys do something?" resulting in the crowd turning into a mob and swarming the police officers. The riot went on for about 45 minutes of pure confusion, including someone lighting the Stonewall Inn on fire. It has never been confirmed who actually set the fire though. Pretty much the police say it was the rioters, and rioters and other witnesses say it was the police. How convenient. This is when the tactical force stepped in and backed up the officers. Just a funny, in retrospective moment. In researching this, I read a lot of the police reports that were made public, and the report from the TPF when they arrived is kind of funny as hell, because it describes them finding the police from the riot in a confused and angry state, with one officer saying the fairies were not supposed to riot. I guess at this time, no one in the NYPD had ever been stood up to like that, and especially by drag queens, and these officers just had no idea what to do with it. The next 2 hours, though, became a shit show of police incompetence on full public display, with almost no public sympathy for them. The crowd forms an opposing chorus line and starts doing the can-can, while queens chanted, "We are the Stonewall girls, we wear our hair in curls, we don't wear underwear, and we show our pubic hair." Shit. Let me go back, I couldn't hold my laugh there. One local resident recalls watching, and in their amusement, a police officer was chasing someone down a crooked street. The officer lost sight of the person they were chasing, just to have the person come up directly behind the police officer and get away. By dawn of the next morning, the majority of the crowds had already cleared the streets, and police had been baffled by the whole situation. The Stonewall Inn was completely gutted, with everything inside had been destroyed by either police, rioters, or the fire. But police in the area said there was still electricity in the air. Reports of the riots made local and regional front page headlines that day, which in turn drew a lot more public attention and curiosity. And you know what they say about curiosity, don't you? That evening, thousands of people that included members of the LGBTQIA+ community, mainstream media, allies and tourists had gathered on the Christopher Street in front of the Stonewall Inn, which was open for business as usual that night, despite the fire. However, the biggest difference people started to notice was people were acting gay in public. Oh my God, how dare they do that? Hide your children, dears, hide your children.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
It was described by one person as, we were just out, we were just in the streets. Now you know where in the streets comes from, eh? After a couple of more days and due to the heavy rain, this allowed the community at Stonewall 2 days to work on an information and media campaign. One of these campaigns came in the form of 5,000 leaflets to inform people of requests to the mayor's office to allow establishments like gay bars to exist and be free from police raids of mob operations with the slogan, "Get the mafia and the police out of gay bars." On the final evening of the riot, another fight broke out on Christopher Street, but this time, rather than being a result of police raids and violence, this was a result of the local Village Voice news mailer printing a scathing story of the riot and the crowds calling it Sunday Bag Follies. Police then came with a lesson in humility and stayed out of it until the crowd threatened to burn down the Village Voice office, which was actually just a few doors down from Stonewall. While the final night of the uprising is described as violent, there were many elaborations on this, or fun stories like the other 2 nights of shenanigans. On a little bit of a personal note here, I think everyone was pissed. They were there again a 3rd night, so this was why we see less of a party and theatrical atmosphere and more of a burn it down atmosphere. And by the morning of July 3rd, the Stonewall uprising was officially over, triggering an international response from other LGBTQIA+ communities to protest their government for equal rights. And over the next 12 months, the Gay Liberation Front formed when the Daughters of Bilitis, Mattachine Society and various other homophile groups united. The GLF helped establish 3 gay and lesbian newspapers that will go on to report on other examples of police raids and systematic hate towards the LGBTQIA+ community and other minority groups in the USA. And with that, finally on June 28, 1970, officially became known as the first annual Christopher Street Liberation Day, and that included 2 nationally organised pride marches held in LA and Chicago on the same day. Each year since 1970, more and more cities have joined the list to have organised pride marches, and there we have it today. So there you have it, viewers. No matter what anyone tries to tell you, Pride did start with riots and protests carried out by people that were just sick and tired of being marginalised just for living their lives. Regardless the spark that actually kicked off the riot against the police that had been struck, and no matter who was there at 0 hour or arrived later, this was a community brought together in unison that inspired communities worldwide to start joining a same sort of unity. Thank you. Hello my lovely unicorns, and thank you for dropping by today. I've been your lovely friend Jay, and if you want to see more of me in the future, and if you have not already, then feel free to smash that subscribe button. If you like the episode, feel free to like it and feel free to comment so I get to know your mind. And also, if you do get time, feel free to share it to your communities, such as your Discord communities, your WhatsApp communities, whoever you deem is worthy. But until next time guys, keep all that love in your heart and spread it out to all those, because God knows this world definitely needs it. Until then, I've been your friend Jay, and I'll see you all very soon. Take care.